Hello, everyone. I'd like to call the July 23rd, 2024 Marine Resources Commission meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Associate Member Branson, followed by invocation by Associate Member Hurston. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, for giving us this day and the opportunity to meet at Virginia Marine Resources Commission to discuss important marine resource issues. Allow us the knowledge and wisdom to render decisions to the best of our ability. In this we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for that. Welcome again, everyone. It's good to see everybody today. First item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any corrections, deletions, or changes from commission members or staff on the current agenda? Mr. Owen?
Good morning. Item 6 has been pulled. We have resolved the objection administratively. We've already issued that permit, sir.
So we need a change to pull item 6 to the agenda. Is there any other changes that we're aware of need to be made? No. That being said, do I have a
Motion to approve agenda. Second.
motion to approve minus pulling item 6? Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. For Mr. Headley, a second for Mr. Branson. Any further discussion? All right. Is there anybody opposed to this move? No opposition? All right, motion carries unanimously. Agenda's approved. All right, minutes. Are there any corrections, deletions, or changes from the commission members or staff for the June 25th, 2024 commission meeting minutes? Any changes or edits, deletions? Anybody? Motion to approve. Got a motion to approve, Mr. Erskine. Do I have a second? Second, Mr. Headley. Any further discussion? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, Randy. Well, wait a minute, let me swear everybody in. I'll swear in VMRC staff and VIM staff that will be speaking and present testimony during this meeting. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. All right, Randy, now the floor is yours.
Commissioner, with your blessings, I'd like to explain the page 2 process to the new Associate Commissioner Preston.
Absolutely, we have a new commissioner. I'm glad you brought that to my attention. Mr. Preston, welcome aboard. He's brand new and ready to roll. He's very ready today, so let's see what we can do.
Welcome aboard, sir. I'm Randy Owen. I'm the Chief of the Habitat Management Division. I've been here a few years. Your page 2 cases will involve one of 3 types of projects. There'll be projects that are only involved in subtidal or subacreage areas that are over $500,000 in cost. We are precluded as a staff from making decisions on those. Only the commission may review and rule on those kind of cases. We also have more recently in the last year added, we serve as the default wetlands or beach and dunes board for select counties. Those cases have been added to page 2, and if you look at items 2A through 2F, all of the cases except for the Coast Guard case, you are serving as the default wetlands board today for those counties who have not either adopted the ordinance or they've rescinded the wetlands ordinance. So, sir, I'd like to proceed. Item 2A, William Didlake is requesting authorization to replace an existing boat ramp with a 12 by 26 foot concrete ramp, 12-foot rock sill extension onto an existing living shoreline sill, place 1 cubic yard of sand, and they'll be planting native wetland vegetation all along Bakers Creek in King and Queen County. This project requires both a subaqueous and a wetlands permit. Item 2B, Grant and Caro is requesting authorization, another boat ramp. This one's gravel with the temporary retaining walls and a open pile tending pier on Piscataway Creek in Essex County. In this case, they will be purchasing wetland credits from the Virginia Aquatic Trust Fund for the loss of the 50 square feet associated with the placement of the ramp. That requires a commission's wetlands and a subaqueous permit. Item 2C, Kevin Luck is looking to build a 180-foot-long revetment along the James River in Henrico County. They also have never adopted the wetlands ordinance, so you are serving as the Henrico County default wetlands board. Item 2D is the Coast Guard in Wormley Creek. They're removing a ramp. Today is ramp day. Removing a ramp, putting one back with a 10-dean concrete float that's concrete with a gangway. all at their Coast Guard Training Center in Yorktown on Wormley Creek, York County. And today, you're just, that project's over $500,000 in cost, so you're acting on the Subacres Authority. Item 2E is the Sims Metal Facility down in Chesapeake, and that's how they trade under SMM Southeast LLC. They have a very, very, very old and large man-made slip where they used to bring ships and barges in and break them down. That bulkhead is in severe deterioration. There are some wetlands associated, that have gotten in behind the wall. So they're looking to excavate 1,078 square feet of vegetated wetlands and 235 square feet of non-vegetated wetlands to -12, fill 1,140 square feet of wetlands and both non-veg and veg for the construction of a new 228 linear foot concrete bulkhead at their property on Buell Street along Mill Dam Creek in Chesapeake. This is an industrial site. This is where they process metal. Requires a commission title wetlands permit. They will be purchasing their credits from the New Mill Creek Title Wetlands Bank. Lastly, item 2F, Gail Smith is requesting authorization to construct a 136 linear foot stone revetment channeled of an existing bulkhead and install a 16-foot linear foot and a 245 linear foot stone sill, which is a living shoreline with sand fill and wetlands at their property, 4038 Tanglewood Trail along the eastern branch of Elizabeth and Chesapeake. In this case, you're serving as the Wetlands Board for Chesapeake as well.
Thank you, Randy. Is there any questions for Chief Owen? Mr. Branson?
Thank you, Commissioner. Chief, the Virginia Aquatic Trust Fund process, is that a lengthy process to buy credits to offset some environmental impact?
It really isn't. You're going to hear at the September meeting more about this because we're going to be bringing you under House Bill 1950 the legislative mandate to update our banking guidance document and our wetlands compensation policy. But essentially, there is a federal state group that we sit on. The commissioner's a signatory. It's the interagency review team. It's the Corps. It's NOAA Fisheries. It's FEMS. It's DEQ. It's VMRC. And the trust fund is managed by the Nature Conservancy. So any regulatory requirement for title or non-title, that trust fund, the Aquatic Trust Fund is essentially, they're an in lieu fee program that's sanctioned by the interagency review team. They've gone through a lengthy process to have that fee set up. And they'll take, across the state, they'll take a liability of allowing you to purchase in lieu fee credits. And once they get to a certain level of liability, they're required by the interagency review team to then go out and build a bank with those monies and to replace those wetlands. So it's a very heavily vetted and approved instrument that you can hear more about in September. But as for an applicant, you make a phone call. There's a website. You can literally get on the website and see if credits are available. You can find out in the same day if the credits are available, and they will give you a letter saying the credits are available.
Okay, so when we approve these page 2 items, that the applicant in this case, he's not going to be delayed in executing his plan by.
We're not going to issue the permit to that credit has been in the bill of sale is in our hands, but he's not. In fact, he was trying to carve out a wetland on site, and it was a steep bank. It really wasn't a good site for an on-site replacement, and the in lieu fee is going to be a better, end of the day, a better mode of compensation for the wetlands.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Erskine?
I have a question, Mr. Owen, about item 2D, the Coast Guard.
Yes.
So the removal that's taking place, what is the difference in the footprint? How much are they expanding in that footprint?
I believe it's in the same footprint, but my staff is not in the room, so Rebecca, could you help me?
Do I need to be sworn in, or?
Come on up here. Yes, you want to be sworn in?
She's the agent for the case.
Oh, good.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
Rebecca Francis, Waterway Surveys and Engineering. Yes, the concrete that's being removed is being replaced in kind, in place, so there's no additional or new impacts.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Branson?
Thank you. One question for you, ma'am. You represent the Coast Guard in this case?
Actually, TST, who
The
is.
contractor?
Yeah, the contractor for the
Okay.
Coast Guard.
When I reviewed this case online, I looked at the VIMS subaquatic vegetation mapping, and I see that they identified subaquatic vegetation outside Wormley Creek in a number of areas, but I'm not real familiar with what it's like inside Wormley Creek, specifically around where they want to do this construction, so.
There's no SAV in the creek. I worked with Lyle 10 years ago on the maintenance dredging for that creek, and I'm very familiar with the creek. It's very muddy for the majority of the creek, and then as you get up near the mouth, it turns to sand as it enters the York River, but no, the creek is
Okay.
without SAV.
All right, thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you, Randy. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak? Anybody signed up to speak on any page two?
This one?
Yeah. No, on this one. Item two.
Item two, it is on item two, but, for A.
All right. Because
Which would be, Carla Heaven.
Please state your name for the record and raise your right hand.
Carla Lynn Schillinger Havens.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
I'm the agent, and I just signed that in case you all had any questions and you had my information on record, but I have nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. All right, that being said, matters before the commission.
I move to approve page two items.
A motion to approve from Associate Member Branson.
Second.
Second from Ms. Edwards. Is there any further discussion for page two items? Is there anyone in opposition to approving all the page two items? That being said, motion carries unanimously. All right, what we got next? Consent, we have Lucas. Four, is any reason to have a closed session?
No, sir.
All right, good. Moving right along. I think, Chief Kenyon, I think you have the floor.
Good morning. This is a joint permit application for Steamboat Wharf Oyster Company. They are requesting authorization to install a traditional oyster flip farm, which contains 600 floating oyster baskets within Little Oyster Creek, and that's a tributary of the Rappahannock River over in Lancaster County. The agency has received 189 written comments pertaining to this joint permit application. Just to give you an idea of where this is at the mouth of Rappahannock, outside of Whitestone. This location map, a little bit more further in depth. This is Little Oyster Creek, right outside of Whitestone, Virginia there, so you have an idea of the area that we're looking at. The application was originally received back on April 3rd, 2024. It requested about 1.5 acres of area in Little Oyster Creek in order to be able to install a flip farm. This original application had about 1,200 baskets, including 8 lines, and covered that entire 1.5 acres. 28.2606 requires notifications to all adjacent landowners within 500 feet. That was carried out as well. This application received a lot of public comment right away from people in the area, neighbors, community, so on and so forth. Based on those comments that came out right away, the applicant did submit a revision. You can see this revision in your packet that was given to you on Friday as well. They decided that they could live with a little bit smaller footprint, maybe not ideal for everything they wanted to do, but still something they could live with in this creek. So they took it down from 1.5 acres to now the current application and request only covers about 1/2 acre, from 8 lines down to 3 lines, and really cut in half from 1,200 baskets down to 600 baskets. And this application is really broken into two parts. One is the manner of the aquaculture in which they want to do, and the second is the location. So I'll speak on the manner in which they want to do it. Installing a traditional flip farm is what they would like to do. Their design is very much in line with industry standards. A flip farm generally has smaller baskets. The maximum size is generally 3 by 2. I think this application is a little bit smaller. Their baskets are about 2 foot by 1 foot. They leave a larger amount of space between those rows so that they can have a boat that comes through and flips those baskets regularly. It cuts down on biofouling, it cuts down on bird droppings, and it creates a better environment for those oysters to grow. So the manner in which they want to do it, the marking with end buoys, the anchors, the number of baskets they have per line, very much with industry standards, looks a lot like other flip farms that exist in Virginia and other states. So staff has nearly no objection to the manner in which they want to conduct this kind of oyster aquaculture. So it kind of gets to the second part of this, and that's where we're receiving the 189 public comments, and this is the location in which they want to do it. You can see the public comments that we have received as an agency is split very much down the middle. We have received 98 in opposition to this and 91 in favor. All these public comments were sent to you previously in your packet. They're also available in that packet in front of you. I've read through them all, try to give you a synopsis of kind of the feeling of the community for pros and cons. So the concerns in this area is impeding the primary waterway access, be able to move boats in and out, degradation of the view shed. There's a community that lives there, that has bought property there. What they do is enjoy being able to see the serenity, being able to see the wildlife. So much of the opposition has concerns about that. Reduce access to recreation activities, generally with the permit conditions of any kind of floating aquaculture. You cannot prohibit the public from going inside. These are generally wider columns to allow for boating access, but there are certain activities that maybe would prove unsafe, whether it's tubing or something like that. Still be able to go in there and fish, but there are concerns that there'd be reduced recreational activities, fishing, swimming, boating, and also reduced property values. All of a sudden, instead of having that serenity in front of your house, you have a small commercial operation, and there are a lot of written comments that are concerned about their property value going down. And all of them, if you read through them, have different nuances of that to their specific concerns, but they all kind of follow those same theme kind of throughout. And we did receive 91 in favor as well. Some of the support items, the importance of oysters to the local economy. This is a small town. This does provide business to the area. A lot of individuals thought it's very important to support small businesses, especially in rural areas. This company specifically has a far reach, and they do ship these oysters from the Rappahannock area out to many other states. Positive impacts on oysters. There are a lot of comments that oysters do a great job of cleaning water. They provide habitat. They encourage other fish and wildlife to be able to come in the area and be able to use that area. So there are positive impacts of oysters just in general and waterway. And then the minimal installation area of a flip farm. Generally, flip farms, as I said, they're low profile. They use smaller cages. There's larger spaces in between. So there was a lot of written comments that this manner in which they want to do floating aquaculture is very positive, especially in the community and in the industry. So although staff has no objection in which the manner they want to do floating aquaculture in this area, staff is looking to the commission and requesting guidance for approval or denial of this application based upon the consideration, the objections raised by residents, comments concerning support of the request, and the consideration of the public trust doctrine. In your packet, you can see if it's approved, there is an annual royalty based on the square footage of the half acre, and there is a bond, a surety bond that the agency collects based on the number of floats. This ensures that if there's a large event that they can't control, a storm or something like that, there is a surety bond that the agency can collect to help clean up whatever that is. So all those permit conditions are written in your packet. At the end there, they go into a little bit more detail about not encroaching on riparian rights, as well as bird deterrent plans and so on and so forth. And those are all very standard permit conditions that you've seen before that are part of all our floating aquaculture. So I'm happy to take any questions about this permit specifically. I know the applicants are here to speak on their behalf, so if there's some specifics about why they chose that area or how they plan on doing aquaculture or anything like that. They are here to be able to answer some of those questions that are a little bit more specific.
Any questions for Chief Kenyon? Mr. Edler?
Thank you, Chief Gooding. On the aerial view of the new area that they, or the reduced area that they have, is there a house? I see trees. It looks like a lot of marshland and trees in the middle of it. Is there a house site?
Yeah, there is a house site, back slide. There is a house site, so this is probably the best area. I know this is the 1.5 acres. It kind of goes down to a 1/2 acre right about in here. So you can see it's a relatively narrow waterway. You can see these docks generally go out to about 3 feet. There is a property owner right in front of here, and he is here to speak on public comment. He is really the only property owner that is right in front of this, is Mr. Rowland, but I believe he has public comments for that as well. When I go to the more detailed, I don't know if you can see this, but this is the Rowland property here.
Yes.
You can see it on your iPad, but this is about 200 feet, and what this represents is about the 4-foot watermark. So the reason it's in this shape is it keeps it out of submerged aquatic vegetation, keeps it off of that 3-foot break. So really this aquaculture facility starts about in 4 feet of water, about 200 feet off the shore.
Thank you.
Mr. Branson?
Chief Kenyon, you mentioned about the spacing being larger. What is a traditional floating bag oyster aquaculture spacing compared to this one?
It's probably at least double the size. Generally with traditional Taylor floats or something like that, you're just getting in and you're working that one. This allows for a little bit more space in between. I don't necessarily have the picture here, but it is in your packet. It does show, if you go to, if you go right below the maps there, it does show a good picture taken from the application that shows one of these vessels operating. You can see it's generally a wider vessel that allows to flip. So this is probably twice the amount that you generally see
Oh,
on
if that's
some
20
kind of-
feet or
Yeah.
25 feet?
It says on the
varies.
diagram here 30 feet.
30 feet?
It says right on the diagram. Now, I don't know if that's accurate, but that diagram right there, if you zoom it in, it says 30 feet.
And that's from the application, but the applicant is here, they can speak to it. if there's
And
any
is there a
changes.
navigable channel, a marked federal channel there in the Rappahannock in that location?
Yeah, and the channel, the general boating channel is a little bit further offshore. General boat traffic travels in this area. They don't necessarily cut the corner as there's a larger shoal, as you can see in this picture out here. So it's generally boat traffic traveling to and fro this way.
Thank you, sir.
You said that there were some other flip farms in the area. Have they had any issues or concerns with those?
No, I say in the area, some of the closer float farms, there's some that live up here in this area. I say live that are over here in this area. There's some off here, and then on the south side of the Rappahannock, over in this area, there's others. And we haven't had any complaints about them or boating accidents or anything like that. I get very little phone calls or things like that might complain about
Thank you.
things in the area.
More questions? Thank you, Adam. Thank you. Is the applicant or representative of the applicant here and wish to speak at this time? Please state your name for the record.
Thomas Hyde.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. So good morning. My name is Tom, and this is my wife, Callie. She has some photos that she's going to hand out, just references, if that's okay with you all.
Gotcha, sir. Thank you. Proceed.
We're the owners of Steamboat Wharf Oyster Company. We've been in business for 4 years, since 2020. We've been working out of this location for 2 years. Over the past year, last summer, we lost about 400,000 oysters due to gear failure out at our primary lease location at Mosquito Point. And those were all the nursery baskets, the smaller mesh flip farm baskets that we had to relocate, and they're on shore now. And this application would be a home for them. So it's we're looking for a more sheltered area where they can stay, not worried about them falling apart. And it's also important for our safety and the safety of our employees that we are able to access it from our dock in any weather. It's really the only location in the area that isn't already permitted, that doesn't involve us going out into the bay or across the Rappahannock to Deltaville to have a lease. It's also the only area in the creek that lacks any significant upland development. So you can see it's very marshy. There's no docks. We're not impeding anybody's access to a dock. So we're asking that permission to grant us two 220-foot lines, one 160-foot line, a 5mm mesh flip farm baskets, spaced 30 feet apart on a half-acre lease in Little Oyster Creek. All components are made with HDPE. The basket and float combined are 29 by 12 by 9 inches. Each basket is attached to a 1-inch diameter rope. We plan to secure each end of these lines with a platypus anchor, and we will secure a 24-inch diameter orange buoy to those anchors for visibility and to keep the lines taut during low tide. So for operation, we're stocking each basket with 8mm triploid oysters. The emptying, sorting, and filling will occur about 2 to 3 times per month. Homeowners can expect this activity to last no longer than 90 minutes and to occur between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. In the spring and early summer, when the barnacles are setting, we'll be flipping and desiccating those cages for about 24 hours once per week. And that's about a 10-minute process. It's very quick with our flipper. For all these activities, the loudest piece of machinery will be our outboard motor going to and from the farm. As far as visibility goes, during the periods of desiccation, the baskets will be the most visible. Each basket will protrude 9 inches out of the water. They'll remain this way until dry, when they will return to the feeding position. In the feeding position, the only portion of the basket that will be visible is about 1 inch of the float, which is be floating on top of the surface. Most landowners that are opposed won't be able to see this farm from their property. To address some of the user conflicts concerns, we do acknowledge this project would limit recreational traffic within the 1/2 acre of the footprint, but there are several points worth noting. The width of the creek at this location is 990 feet with approximately 700 feet of channel. This project will parallel the southeast edge of that channel, occupying an 85-foot by 270-foot rectangle buoy to buoy. This leaves 615 feet of navigable channel to the northwest, which is ample space for wide turns, tubing, jet skiing, etc. The area immediately to the southwest and northeast of the project, these are on reference pages 5 and 6 of the packet I just handed out. Those areas are not navigable. We positioned that project in the crook of that marsh or that shallows as much as possible to avoid conflicts with boaters and also to avoid conflicts with SAB. Community members have marked these shallow areas, southwest and northeast, with PVC poles to avoid people running aground, and those have been there since we moved in. So if you're entering the creek, you already have to veer to the northwest to avoid running aground, which is away from the proposed site. We encourage our neighbors to freely paddle in and between our lines. There will be no loose rope to entangle swimmers or tubers. There will be no metal, aside from the anchors, which will be driven into the mud. You won't be able to even see the metal. The rope will be sticking out of the mud. Swimmers should be mindful of barnacles, but the system is far safer than large metal bottom cages. We encourage anglers to fish amongst the farm as long as they don't damage any of the gear. For environmental concerns, bird feces will mitigate this with weekly upkeep and flipping. Passive boat traffic and a thriving eagle population will also discourage birds from perching on floats. Storms, this area is plenty sheltered to avoid major severe storms and minor hurricanes, and we do not plan to use this location as a harbor any additional cages from any leases. That was originally what we were thinking. We scrubbed that just to avoid any conflict with any of the neighbors about having too many floats in the area. So this is the permit. We're not putting any additional floats in the creek other than the 600 that are on this permit. For plastics, microplastics are a real concern and should be addressed throughout the commercial fishing industry. Plastic cages, given enough exposure and abrasion, will start to degrade. Placing farms in sheltered locations like this one is the surest way to prolong the lifespan of our gear. Oyster farming is often touted as a pure good for the environment. While it is a net positive, it is by no means perfect. If they produce an oyster float that doesn't use plastic, we will be among the first to invest. So the Fleece Island residents are a mixture of newcomers and locals. They are genuinely good people. They are the type of folks that will drop everything to help you out of a ditch. They care deeply for the health and safety of the island and its inhabitants. We are truly grateful to have such wonderful neighbors. I acknowledge that we should have worked harder to generate some consensus prior to submitting the JPA. In hindsight, having read the comments, a widely disseminated letter explaining our plan might have subdued some of the negative reactions. After the first round of public comments sank in, we tried to compromise by shrinking the property by 2/3. However, it is now clear that some of the neighbors are staunchly opposed to any oyster farming whatsoever. They want to support watermen as long as we stay out of their creek. The river's value is more than just aesthetic. It is more than a playground for windsurfers and jet skiers. It is a fertile, arable resource upon which our livelihoods depend. Lancaster County is and always has been dependent on working waterfronts. We are part of a new generation of watermen. Please give us the opportunity to continue the legacy. Pending your questions, that's all I have.
Any questions?
Yeah, a couple
Mr.
of questions. Sir, how many other flip farm oyster aquaculture operations do you have?
We just have one other one, it's off of Mosquito Point.
Okay. And another question is, do you have oyster cages, oyster enclosures on the bottom in this lease already?
No, we do not.
No? Okay. You just plan to do floating oyster, flip farm oyster aquaculture here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. That's all I had.
Mr. Erskine?
Mr. Hyde, thank you. You mentioned that this would be a nursery site where you would put smaller seed. So a nursery doesn't necessarily operate throughout 12 months out of the year. Do you plan on having gear there 12 months out of the year, or would this strictly be temporary in nature to nurse those sea oysters?
This will be there year-round just because we have to, when we plant in October or so, they'll still reach a point where we can't move them out to the farm, the Mosquito Island farm yet. They'll still be too small, so we need a place to store them, and this would be the place to store them over winter.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Mr. Hadley?
If it is approved, would y'all be willing to put ample markings around the site to help boat traffic navigate around it?
Absolutely.
Just a
Mr.
follow-up
Branch?
question about the spacing. I read in the report, I saw 20 feet, I saw 25 feet, I saw 30 feet. That's why I asked Chief Kenyon, what's going to be the average? You got 3 rows, correct?
So it'll be two 30-foot gaps. So it'll be a line of cages, a 30-foot gap, second line, and then
Okay.
the third line.
Right. Just for,
25 feet is the distance between the buoy and anchor and the beginning of the line.
Okay, I
And that's
follow
enough
that.
space for us to attach our shuttle.
yeah, all right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
First Sergeant Pitt, is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this matter?
Yes, sir. Mr. Brian Peoples.
And Mr. Commissioner, to be clear, I will be speaking in opposition, so I'm not sure if you're asking now for anyone else in favor.
We'll just go by the list in order.
Okay.
It'll get too confusing striking them out of that list. You're an attorney, you don't represent this opposition, so you're sworn in your duty, so.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, thank you. And I do, Brian Peoples is my name with the law firm of Pender and Coward in Virginia Beach, and I do represent a foundation, an LLC called the Fleets Island Foundation, which consists of some of the homeowners in the neighborhood who are opposed to this application. And I say neighborhood because that I think is important. There are a lot of houses around here on this creek, on the tributary, maybe not immediately adjacent, but in this area. And it's a neighborhood creek. It's considered to be a neighborhood creek. And the homeowners who are in opposition to this, they know the area. They know it very well. They've lived here, some of them for a long time. And they're going to speak individually after me, and they know that they have 3 minutes each. So I might go a few minutes longer than that, but not a lot. And so this initial application was submitted on April 3rd of 2024, as Mr. Kenyon said. And then there was a revised application which did reduce the size of the proposed oyster farm, and that was submitted on April 29th of 2024. And I know the applicant said that they reduced the size of the oyster floats. I mean, rather of the whole area and the number of cages in response to objections from the community, and that might be true, but at least one of the reasons we believe is because the initial proposal took up the entire shoreline of that adjacent property and would have interfered with the riparian right of that property owner who objected to that, Mr. Rowland. It would have prevented him from building a pier, and so that's at least one of the reasons that the size was reduced. There was another revision submitted on May 10th of this year, and then the application was initially set for hearing on May 28th of this year, and an application submitted on April 3rd, and then set for hearing on May 28th seemed unusually fast to us, just in my experience of doing JPAs and arguing for and against JPAs. It did seem unusually fast. It was just, the following month, and it was also set, that May 28th hearing, immediately after a three-day holiday, and so we sent in a letter requesting a continuance to this month. And I just want to make sure that that letter requesting a continuance is a part of the record. I'll say I misdated it accidentally. I put 2023. It should have said 2024. But I have a copy of that, which I'll hand up afterwards, just to make sure that that's in the record.
So what you're saying is lawyers have typos too? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And then I even carried over the typo in my next letter because of a copy-paste error. Yes, sir. And the reason that we had requested to continue that hearing initially was based on a couple of reasons. One of them, again, like I said, it appeared that the hearing was being fast-tracked a little bit, and that's my term. And we were told through conversations with the staff and through conversations that our members, that some of the homeowners had with the applicant, is one of the reasons is because the applicants, like they said, had this other area, this fairly large area at Mosquito Point, where they initially intended to put this flip farm, but the gear that they bought, and maybe because it's the smaller cages that they were describing, it turned out that it didn't work there because of the winds and the tides. And so they wanted to put it somewhere else quickly in order to be able to save their oyster growing season. And we objected to that, saying that the interests of this oyster company shouldn't be put in front of the interests of other people. And we were denied that continuance initially. We also objected initially because we pointed out that on the graphic, and it was shown here on the graphic, of where this oyster farm is going to be, there was a green line on the graphic that Mr. Kenyon showed, which is the edge of the subaquatic vegetation as mapped out by VIMS. But we pointed out that this SAV is growing and expanding, and the people who live there can tell you that, and we're not sure that that is still an accurate location because the VIMS map of that SAV was a little bit old. It was a year or two out of date. And so we thought that VIMS needed to take a look at that and make sure that there isn't any SAV in this area. But again, as I mentioned, our initial request to postpone the hearing was denied, and then May 21st rolled around, May 21st of 2024, and it came to our attention that the applicant had placed a very, very large number of floating oyster cages near the pier in the water at Mosquito Point. And we looked and didn't see a JPA for that, and brought that to the attention of the staff, so I sent an email along with some pictures, and I believe that's part of the record, but I'll hand that up when I'm done to make sure. And we said, if this is not permitted, then it appears to be a violation, and if it's a violation, we would again like to have the hearing postponed until that violation is remedied. And I don't know whether that was deemed a violation or not, because I didn't get that answer. But what I do know is that almost within a day or two, we got information that the hearing had been postponed. And so if in fact it was a violation, if the applicant did put all those hundreds of oyster cages in the water without a permit, I just think that should be something that's taken into consideration when you decide whether to approve this permit. Our objection letter that I sent in on May 22nd, 2024, not 2023, explained our position in detail, and I don't want to be too redundant, but I want to hit some of the main points there. First, we believe that approval of this application would violate the public trust doctrine. As you know, the public trust doctrine requires you to balance the public and private benefits and harms of these applications. And specifically, Virginia Code 28.2.1205 says that you have to take the effect of nearby properties into account. And just to be clear, everybody here on both sides supports Waterman. And there would be no objection to bottom cages. Everyone here is unanimous on that. Bottom cages would be encouraged, would be just fine. There's also no objection to the flip farm operation operating off of Mosquito Point, which is the other location that the applicants have. We support all of that. But there is a reason, unlike bottom cages, that floating cages require a permit, and they require a hearing like this if it's objected to. And that's because the law recognizes, and the commission has recognized, that floating cages have a much different impact on the adjacent property owner than bottom cages do. They just do. I'll point out there's about 85 to 90 lots in the neighborhood on the creek and on the tributaries that feed the creek. We think there's 67 homes because some of the lots don't have homes on them yet. And the property owners, they all bought those properties at a premium, and partially because of the view and the ability to use the water. They pay very high property taxes for that. Many of them worked their whole lives in order to be able to afford these locations, and they didn't buy these homes and these lots expecting that a commercial oyster operation was going to pop up in this creek. The cages cause a lot of impacts. They cause a loss of the view shed that was mentioned. There's a smell that's associated with it. There's bird and animal feces that can accumulate on them, and there's safety concerns, and I'll address those here in a moment. So there is a large impact on the public here. And that's on one side. And on the other side, it's the seafood company, and they do have other locations. They have other locations that they can put these cages. And if they bought gear that isn't appropriate for the other location that they already had, I feel bad for them for that, but frankly, that's kind of on them. And the other people in this community shouldn't have to bear the burden if they bought gear that it wasn't appropriate for the area that they had. The staff report mentioned that there's 98 objections and 91 comments in favor of support, or in support. I also have something in addition that I'd like to hand up. This is a petition that's online. This is 96 people who are also opposed. Some of them are the same people that are opposed, but this is available on the FleetsIslandFoundation.org website. And if I could hand this to the first sergeant to make part of the record. There's only one copy of this. It's just a petition. But what's really important, I think, is that when you look at the 98 or 96, I guess 98 protests and the 96 people who signed the petition, and then you look at the 91 comments in support, what's striking is that nearly everybody who lives in this area is opposed. And it appears that the people who are writing letters of support don't live here. And I have another exhibit that I'd like to hand up for this. And what this is going to show, and there's one for each of the commissioners to have one, is where these protesters and supporters live. And so the lots that are colored in red are people who are opposed. The lots that have no color are people who we don't know. They didn't make a comment or we weren't able to get in touch with them. And the two lots in green are the people who have sent in letters in support. And that's one of them is the applicants themselves, and another one we believe owns an Airbnb and doesn't actually live there. And so I think this is pretty compelling to show that when it comes to people who actually live in this area and live in this neighborhood, it's really not a 50-50 split. It's very overwhelmingly opposed to this application. Safety issues. When you look at this on a map, I will say it looks like a really wide, pretty wide creek that has plenty of room for boats to go around this proposed oyster farm. And they say they're only going to take up, I think, 200 feet of this 800-foot wide waterway. But what really needs to be taken into consideration there is the depth. Well, first of all, I'll just point out it's a lot narrower than it looks, and we see this all the time when you look at something on Google Earth or on a map, and then you actually walk out to the area and say, oh, wow, that's a lot smaller. This is one of those locations. And the depth is important because, as Mr. Kenyon said, these will be placed in depth that's about 4 to 6 feet deep. But the majority of that area, the vast majority of that length, that breadth across the creek is only a couple of feet deep, 1 to 2 feet deep. And so putting these cages in the 4 to 6 foot deep section means that the cages are going to be located in the most usable part of the creek, in the part of the creek that's used a lot. Even though it might not be technically in the navigational channel, that area is used by boaters, it's used by fishermen, water skiers, and it is a safety hazard to those folks. A lot of them are children just learning to drive jet skis and things like this. There's also,
Hey, Counselor.
Sir?
You know I know a lot of your people here know my 3-minute rule, and I've been very generous, so wrap it up, please.
I'm wrapping it up. Thank you. I would like to hand up one more thing. There is actually a kayak route called the Fleets Island Water Trail that goes right through that location. The SAV issue, as we talked about before, this proposed location, according to the map that you were shown, goes right to the edge. But we believe the SAV may go beyond that, or if it's not, it would, right? Because it's growing, and the residents can tell you that it's increasing. So at the end of the day, we just believe that floating oyster cages are good in some locations. They're appropriate in some locations. They would be appropriate at Mosquito Point. Bottom cages are just fine. But when you balance the hardships and you balance the benefits and the hardships that this application creates, it weighs much more heavily in favor of the homeowners than it does on this one seafood company. And we just ask that you put the interest of all of these homeowners above the interest of the seafood company. And subject to your questions, that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Counselor. Any questions, Mr. Branson?
Commissioner, thank you. Counselor, I have one question actually, and it's either for Chief Kenyon, yourself, or counsel next to me, and that's regarding riparian rights. You made a statement early on about how this might interfere with his the landowner's riparian rights. My understanding is that riparian rights supersede the provisions of an oyster lease, and that this oyster lease is in 4 feet of water, therefore it wouldn't be in his riparian area, which I think extends to 3 feet.
Riparian area extends to the line of navigability, which is usually about 3 or 4 feet. It's now line of navigability is defined as the water depth contour line required to operate a boat that's normally operated in that area. But what I actually said is to clarify, the original application, the one that had a long
That's
area.
a moot point now.
It's a moot point, but my point in bringing it up was that, yes, we appreciate that the oyster farm has been reduced, but it wasn't just because of, a desire to please the community. It was because it was essentially, it had to be.
So if this, a proposed pier at some future date, if it was to be constructed, and it was going to be into this leased area, that there's some adjustment that has to be made. I think the chief of Shellfish and the staff, they address those issues when they come up. But there's no, to my understanding, there is no proposed pier or a JPA for a pier from the adjacent landowner.
That's my understanding, and I believe that landowner is here to speak to that, but I believe that's right, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have 2 questions. Could you by any chance tell me how many are duplicate on this list that sent in letters?
I do not know. I know that a good number of them probably are the same people, just based on numbers.
Okay. And my second, you said that a kayak trail would not be able to continue. Isn't there enough space between that kayaks could go through?
I pointed out that a kayak trail runs through this location. I heard the applicant say that they believe that a kayak could go through it. I do not know. I haven't tried to take a kayak through one of these, so I, from personal knowledge, can't speak to that. It seems to me that people would not want to do that. They'd be nervous to do that, especially if they see these, markings that were described, and think that they might be trespassing or think that it might be dangerous to go through. I think it would certainly discourage people from using the kayak trail, even if they were physically able to do it.
Thank you.
I have a question, sir. Yes, it's kind of related back to fellow board member. The 96 signatures that are on that petition, are they all residents of this area? Or are they Lancaster County based? Or it seemed, I think you quoted like 67 homes within the area, but there's 96 signatures. I got that more than one person lives in a home. I'm just trying to figure out, are they all residents of that community there.
My understanding is they are, but Mr. Travis Willow, who's going to speak after me, is the person who put this petition up online, and he can answer the specifics about who it is that signed the petition.
Understood, thank you.
Mr. Erskine?
Thank you, sir. You mentioned that some of the pictures that we saw in Mr. Kenyon's presentation had the width of the creek, the opening. It looks larger in the pictures than it actually is. What is the actual width of navigable water into that creek?
Well, I don't know the width of the actual navigable waterway, but based on depth soundings that I've seen, which I didn't bring with me today, the part of the creek that's more than 4 feet deep is really just the very, very center of it. Like if you take maybe it's a quarter of the width of it, that essentially kind of goes through the center, and this oyster farm is in part of that area.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions for council? Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Commissioner.
Are you-
Oh, and I'm sorry, but I did want to hand up the letters with the corrected dates, if that's fine. Thank you.
All right, everyone, I know as we open this up to public comment, we gave the applicant and council representing opposition a little bit more time than we usually do. Just for a reminder, it's 3 minutes. Lisa, can you have the time for me, please? Please call it first.
Courtney Steele.
Get your name for the record.
Courtney Steele.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I'm super duper nervous. I
you-
just had to say that.
Take it easy, you're fine.
This is for you guys. The first one are some pictures, and one really shows just how small our little creek is and how narrow. It's this picture in your packet.
If you're gonna present it, it belongs to us as evidence of that.
Yeah, it's all in there.
Proceed.
Okay. So my name is Courtney Steele. I come from a family of watermen on Gwynn's Island. I grew up on the Piankatank. So I do not want to be looked at as somebody that opposes watermen or comes here, or as they come here, as they say. In front of you is a collection of our pictures of our community using our small creek for recreation. A petition signed by 95 people opposing this lease that live in that area. And on top of that, all the opposition letters you received online, most of whom cannot be here because they are working. You have a map showing the position of the cages on our very small creek laying directly on Little Oyster Creek Fleets Island Water Trail in our deepest waters, waters that we use for recreation and navigation. Lastly, a highlighted letter from the Hydes stating their intention when they first came to our community for support to start their business. Now they are changing their promises that were made to us as a community, and this is not acceptable. I'd like to start by reading a quote from Callie. It's in this magazine here. It's in the Virginia Living magazine. We jumped in with no experience and just started asking questions. We decided to learn and figure it out as we go. I'm here to tell you I do not want our small creek and our community to be a part of their learning curve. We should not have to reap the negative repercussions for their mistakes of buying cages that cannot hold up in the over 45 acres of water they already lease, 3 miles from our creek. We live in a very small, densely populated community. We have over 65 houses sharing our small shorelines, not to mention a multitude of houses on our small island that are inland that share this creek for recreation. Little Oyster Creek also protects us from waves that arise in the Rappahannock. Due to that, we have people coming from offshore of the island to use this creek for safe recreational purposes. A large draw for islanders as well as outsiders is the water trail that leads through the creek along our shorelines where these cages will be placed. These cages are taking up 25% of our navigational waterways in our creek and that are used for recreation and navigation. 25% may not seem too bad to you, but if you see how narrow our area is and how small our creek is, you will be as shocked as we are. They will limit our navigational abilities greatly and create hazards. And this picture right here is the one that shows where these cages are going to go, and this is where a fishing vessel is. And this is our neighbor's look outside of his new house that he just bought, that he spent his life savings to move to. We can't navigate. We can't take our children on tubes because this is the deepest water. It's a very active community, as you can see from the pictures. We use the water trail. We have, now we'll have floating oyster cages in the middle of our designated trail. We fish, we water ski, we windsurf. We have a plethora of boaters, jet skiers, kids on tubes being pulled behind their parents and grandparents, and a lot of swimmers. Our children, our grandchildren play in these waters, as well as us big kids.
Ma'am, wrap it up, please.
That's it, thank you.
Is there any questions for the speaker? Thank you for the pictures, that was well done.
You're welcome, thank you.
Next speaker.
Mark Rowland.
Please state your name for the record.
My name's Mark Rowland.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Hello, my name is Mark Rowland. Last summer, my wife and I purchased a waterfront home in the beautiful community of Fleets Island near Whitestone, Virginia, to pursue our pre- and post-retirement dreams. We are both still working. We were both raised in blue-collar families. My wife's father worked in a paper mill, and my dad was a Coca-Cola driver. We both went to college. None of our parents went to college. We put ourselves through college, and we've earned and we've worked hard, and we still are, to be in where we are today. We and our neighbors routinely enjoy kayaking, paddleboarding, other recreational sports, as Courtney mentioned, and quietly sitting on our docks admiring the local natural beauty and serenity of Little Oyster Creek. We also enjoy the great neighbors who embraced us warmly from the start. We all pay a premium to live on the water and a premium in Virginia taxes as well. However, as a community, we have recently been subject to the applicant's proposed commercial venture of placing plastic crates in our quiet residential community for personal financial gain. Our property at 652 Little Oyster Lane is immediately adjacent to the proposed footprint of this operation. In the published VMRC JPA amendment, there's a letter from the HUD stating they feel their application lacks any impact to immediate upland development such as houses or docks. I would ask you to reference figure 1. When I look at that, I certainly see houses and docks, and again, my house is the one that's immediately adjacent there. For those who think this project is non-impactful to viewscape, here's a photo taken from my porch showing the proposed footprint of the plastic floating crates. That's figure 2. I can't imagine anyone who would want these to be placed in direct view from their home with a proposed length of over approximately 300 feet, the size of a football field. I have included figures 3 and 4, which were taken directly from the applicant's application, showing what some of this machinery and these crates will look like. Furthermore, imagine when these are covered with bird feces and the odor emanates or having to look out from your porch and see or hear someone with machinery flipping all of them several times a month. So not only would the local community need to endure the unsightly view of these plastic floating crates, we would also need to endure the smell and noise pollution. This unfairly impacts our overall daily quality of lives and severely impacts our property values. We do not believe this type of commercial aquaculture belongs in a residential community, especially one as small, confined, and actively utilized recreationally as Little Oyster Creek. We value the privacy and beauty of the creek and water so much, we recently, in March, 1 month before this application went through, purchased the adjacent property. That's figure 5. So we are heavily invested our life savings as I started. We've worked hard where we are. We're still working hard. We've purchased these properties, and now we find out that this is going to be thrown in our face. We further.
Take your time, sir. You okay?
I've tried to work. I've talked to Mr. Kenyon. I've talked to Mr. Hyde, trying to work some sort of compromise to which he had initially agreed to. I reached out to him last week, and I have heard nothing. Go ahead.
One second, let's see if you have any questions, sir. Is there any questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry.
No question. Mr. Erskine.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland.
Yes, sir.
So the slide that you handed out, page 5, you just referenced?
Yes.
Which lots, because these are numbered, lots 1 and 2, those are the 2 that you're referring to that you own, lots
Yes.
1 and 2?
Yes, that's the ones our house, and then the ones in the adjacent property that's vacant.
Okay. Follow-up question, sir?
Yes, sir. Proceed.
So on lot 1, that's your home
Yes.
there. So is that your pier?
Yes.
That goes out that way?
Yes.
So in this marsh area, there's no development that can occur in that area? It
Correct.
would be lot 2, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ms. Guilford Lucy.
Please raise your
Hi,
hand.
Drusilla Milford.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but true, so help you God?
Yes.
Proceed.
Little Oyster Creek is effectively a protected bay off the Rappahannock River. It is largely protected from the winds on the river. It is a calm, serene setting. The people of the Oyster Creek community bought their properties based on the scenic beauty of the location and to have the opportunity in this setting for many recreational activities, such as fishing, kayaking, canoeing, boating, etc. Small day sailing, jet skis, water skiing, tubing, all of which takes place in this protected creek on a regular, if not daily basis, and which is not always possible in the rough waters of the Rappahannock River and the Chesapeake Bay. We all have our beautiful views and abundant opportunities to use the water resources that the location provides. The people in this small community have spent hard-earned money to be in this exact spot. And what is being discussed here today would have a severe negative impact on all of us if you grant it. You have a petition before you signed by, I believe at least 97% of the surrounding landowners in opposition to the requested license. Many of us are here today to speak to you directly. We are not opposed to the Watermen. Indeed, it is in the blood and heritage of our broader community, and it serves a vital role in the life of our community and the health of the bay. But our small protected creek is not the place for this commercial activity. It is just not the right location. Where we look upon beautiful, calm waters today, we would see unsightly floating cages that would impact our views. It would impact our property values, and it would also create a severe safety hazard. The navigational hazard that would be created is significant. Where people now, today, can kayak, ski, day sail, boat, etc., without any hazard, would be the same people that could get seriously hurt. We understand that the water resources of this great commonwealth belong to all of us, and that you are charged with administering the access and rights to this resource. And we are here today to plead with you to take into consideration the views and rights of the people who live in our slice of heaven. Please do not take that from us. We very respectfully ask you to deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any questions for the speaker? Thank you very much. Thank you.
John Guilford.
Please state your name for the record in the microphone. Raise your right hand.
John Milford.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
I do have a handout too. I'd like to share this with the commission. Thank you. I am actually presenting for one of our neighbors, Greg Carroll, who could not be here today. And I just wanted to read his statement. Little Oyster Creek in Fleets Island is a pristine piece of nature. The Virginia Kayak Trail has scouted out Virginia waterways which highlight the beauty, wildlife, and serenity of nature, thereby allowing individuals and groups of people the pleasure of seeing nature from the perspective of a non-commercialized, natural setting. Little Oyster Creek is part of the Virginia Kayak Trail, and as you can see from this picture, which I've shared with you, the trail leads directly through the proposed VMRC oyster cage permit area applied for by Thomas Hyde. Senator Tim Kaine wrote a book several years ago entitled Walk, Ride, and Paddle. In this book, he extols the sanctity of Virginia's beautiful creeks and the natural beauty that we all must take advantage of, not change. In addition to the kayak and paddle boards that many of us use for a variety of reasons, lower stress, increased flexibility, improved cardiovascular and cardiorespiratory function, to name a few, the waterway is used by boaters for recreational activities such as skiing, wakeboarding, tubing, swimming, and fishing. Nature has been taken for granted and abused by humanity for many years. It is our time to halt this abuse before it is too late.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Dave Fieldhouse.
Yep, that's me. Well, it's all should be done.
Please state your name for the record.
I'm Renee Philhauer.
You swear to tell the whole truth and what true self you got? Proceed.
Okay, so I want to just expand a little bit more about the Fleece Island Water Trail. I represent a family of 6, and we bought our home, which is within swimming distance to this proposed oyster farm area. We bought our home in 2020, and we use this creek all the time, nearly every inch of it, for kayaking, paddleboarding, all the sports, fishing, boating, wave runners, and we do it almost every weekend, even in the winter. One of the biggest selling points, though, of the home when we bought it was this water trail, which our realtor presented to us when we bought the home, knowing that I love to kayak and paddleboard. And I have been on this portions of the trail several times. It's a gem. In fact, you should come out and try it sometime. It really is beautiful. But let me give you some advice first. This area of the trail is usually littered with anchored boats and whatnot. It's a little tricky to get around and whatnot. This area of the trail is for advanced people. It's so choppy out that way. My kayak actually broke when I was out there. I had to kind of jerry-rig it to get it back in shape just so I could get back home. But this area of the trail where the oyster farm would go it's the sweet spot. It's the calm spot. It's the peaceful spot. It's the people that, the spot that people want to go to and kayak, and it's beautiful. There's herons and osprey and bald eagles and beautiful grasses and a natural coastline. So the oyster trail, the oyster farm would go right there, and it's going to push those kayakers and those paddleboarders further into the deeper water where the boats want to go. That's not a good situation. When I'm out on my, when I'm on my paddleboard, I don't want to be close to the boats. I want to be as far away from those boats as I can because they're not always respectful. So this trail was funded by the Northern Neck Planning District Commission and the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program using grant money. This is not just some trail that somebody came up with. The Northern Neck Planning Commission recently received another $1 million grant to revitalize Whitestone. Did you know that Whitestone doesn't have a single park or a hiking trail in our town? The Little Oyster Water Trail is possibly the only recreational trail that our town has to brag about. So adding the oyster floats there it would take away from what our town has. There's a picture here. Sorry, I think I'm almost done. This is a picture of the cookies from our boat, from our navigation taken over the past year, and you can see where we travel typically to get in and out of the waterway, and roughly that would be where the oyster farm goes, and we travel through there by boat often. Do you have any questions? I'm done.
Mr. Erskine?
I'm done.
I have a question, ma'am.
Sure.
So when you referenced the water trail,
Yes.
you said up to the north part of this water trail, there are many more boats, moorings, and so you have to navigate around that. How do you do that and navigate around?
Well, I do it during the week when they're not all there.
Okay, so you can't navigate around that area.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Make sure you stay in front of the microphone for the record.
I can't see you guys. I'm short.
The microphone's for the record.
Oh, so sorry. I'm sorry. That area is part of the advanced loop, and I have been on that area. Getting there is amazing. It does get trickier there because of the waves. Not as tricky though as this section here and maybe this section down here.
Understand.
That's really hard. That's doable. On the weekends, there's you got a lot of boats, a lot of sailboats coming in, and it's just an area that, a common area that people come. It's a little trickier to get it around that.
Okay.
But again, this area in here, that's where you want to be. That's the quiet area. That's the zen time, the relaxation time. And can I say one more thing? Somebody mentioned about going through the traps or the floats. I would not want to do that. All right, so you have your space, sure, but what if I get knocked off my paddleboard? I don't want to be swept into any of his equipment, get cut up by barnacles or whatever, if the current is flowing strongly through that area. So I would definitely not choose to go through the floats. It wouldn't make any sense to do that.
Have a follow-up question, sir?
Yes, sir.
So when you mentioned the gear is in the area where you would have the water trail, what precludes you from going inshore?
Grasses?
Paddleboard.
Grasses, you don't want to get too close. I would not want to fall down. If the water's more shallow and you've got oyster shells down there, you cut your foot open. No, you really kind of want to, for me, I'm talking about myself, you kind of want to be out there a little bit where if you run into trouble, you're going to be in a safe spot.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
you letting
you.
me talk.
You did a good job. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Sue Graff.
Please state your name for the record.
Yes, Susan Graff.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Good morning. I have a home on Little Oyster Lane. In our area, successful oyster companies have a different philosophy about floating oyster cage placement than Steamboat Wharf Oyster Company. A recent quote from one of the owners of Rappahannock Oyster Company said, quote, "We wanted to be respectful and not up in your face." I'll just repeat that. "We wanted to be respectful and not up in your face," end quote. A Bay Journal article stated that Whitestone Oyster Company has made the choice of a good neighbor by placing its floating cages in open water. However, Steamboat Wharf Oyster Company's proposed placement is basically in the Little Oyster Creek residents' front yard. Yeah, we use that creek as our front yard. Now, my personal story, real quick. I bought my house on Little Oyster Creek over 30 years ago, specifically to windsurf after learning on the Potomac in Alexandria, and have been using this proposed cage area ever since for windsurfing, kayaking, and boating. The creek is perfect for the sport. Tacking, jibing, using the length of the creek in different winds is so rewarding and hopefully brings joy to others, especially my elderly neighbor who took a picture last week of me sailing. I didn't know that. In the very spot where the cages are proposed. Gliding along silently in such a beautiful creek is so peaceful, and I feel in harmony with its water and shoreline. 2 weeks ago, while sailing in the early morning, 2 dolphins gracefully came up alongside of me. It took my breath away, since I have actually never seen any dolphin in my creek. It was thrilling. So, you can imagine my shock when I learned of the proposed cage placement taking up so much of sailing space, the area I go to many times to change course. It's a safe place in case I fall, and also out of the channel where other watercraft might be. It's also the best area for a nice long beam reach without docks, and it's unobstructed wind. To my delight, I'm in the process of teaching another resident this wonderful sport, and soon her family. Of course, this is not just about me. And many people have stories like this. But will 2 people have a right to devalue the quality of life for so many? Does the confined Little Oyster Creek have to be a source of revenue for Steamboat Wharf Oyster Company? The Chesapeake Bay and the Rappahannock River are so very close and being used successfully by respectful oyster farmers. Thank you for taking into consideration the public's interest. Question?
Is there any questions for the speaker?
No question.
Thank you.
I learned at Windsor.
Thank you for the offer. I like all you on that.
Gary Grant.
Please state your name for the record in the microphone.
My name is Gary Grab.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
My lovely wife expressed her emotions, makes me emotional thinking about it. But anyway, get on my thing. The map was handed out to you and showing the people that we went around and talked with, and ones that protested, and the ones who are in favor. You know, Thomas, of course, is in favor of it, and the other Airbnb right across the way was in favor of it. It was the daughter of the owners and so forth. And she's a friend of the Hive, so I understand that, and not a problem. But, you know, that place is up for sale. And as a side note, the first people that came to get a contract on that backed out of the deal when they found the floating cages were going to be in front of them. So it does affect real estate properties. I'd like to state also, when Thomas Hyde first started his business in Little Oyster Lane, he wrote a letter to the neighbors saying that oyster storage would be confined and limited to around and beneath the dock area, bulk of farm work done on offshore lease, and traffic to property limited to themselves and their vehicles. These turned out to be false statements. Neighborhood became alarmed when the MRC posted that they were going to put oyster cages in Little Oyster Creek. So I'd also like to address, which I've spoken to you like 2 months ago on the same thing, about diploid and triploid oysters, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Triploids are sterile oysters. They don't add anything to the biomass of the creek, anything to help spread the species. What they are good for is, they say, cleaning the bay, cleaning the water. Well, you're taking a triploid oyster, which is the size of your fingernail, up to a marketable 3-inch oyster, which is not a mature oyster by any way, misshapen form. And everybody quotes, 50 gallons a day in pristine waters and conditions, and lab conditions. Well, you have this oyster growing from that to a 3-inch size in 365 days. Most of the time, it's not filtered hardly anything. And then the rest of the time, it probably is only like 1 or 2 gallons a day if you average it over the time, and then that oyster's gone. Nobody really wants the big triploid oysters. That just doesn't seem to be a marker for that. And the other thing that really affects me is thinking about the microplastics. These cages, there aren't any other flip farm cages in the area that I know of. So we have this, and the idea is that these small cages, you're going to take the oysters, you're going to flip them, kind of keep them from biofouling, you're going to break off the bills, make them more fat and everything, make them grow out better. It all sounds good, but this is abrasion against that plastic. These cages are, I think what they're using is a 5-year guarantee from the manufacturer. But, you know, Hyde's found out the first year they're using the 5mm cages. They couldn't hold up to the wave action out there. So they've since gotten 10mm cages, which supposedly can handle that. But because of their mistake in the beginning and their loss of those oysters, it all of a sudden becomes our problem, and they want to take these cages and put them in our creek. We have the microplastics. The other thing is triploids. Y'all, I'm sure, know this, but 50% of the oysters, the triploids, are dying off from the 1-year period. That's a tremendously high number. What's the cause of this? Is it the genetics of the way they're breeding? Is it the constant tumbling? Is it the crowding in the baskets? You know, it's not a good thing to be doing that. And,
Sir, your time is running. Can you wrap it up, please?
I would like to conclude just by saying that I don't think that this is good for Little Oyster Creek and a small creek. Out in the open water and so forth, you know, dilution, solution, pollution, maybe, but not in our creek. Any questions?
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Liz Rowland.
Just remember, guys, when that yellow light flashes on, you have about 30 seconds. I'm trying not to be rude and cut you off, but please state your name for the record.
Elizabeth Rowland.
You swear to tell, raise your hand, you swear to tell the whole truth and the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed, ma'am.
Okay. So I'm presenting on behalf of my mom today, who couldn't be here. So I want to focus my remarks today on what Virginia is about. Virginia is for lovers, and the tourism department gets even more specific. Virginia is for all kinds of outdoor lovers. In fact, it promotes itself for beach loungers, paddle dippers, and dock sitters. But there is a fine print that Virginia doesn't disclose. You are welcome to live your dreams until those dreams interfere with commercial business. Please come live here and settle down. We invite you to purchase a waterfront home of your dreams, pay a premium, and pay a premium in taxes as well. We did just that, relocated for the long term, moving our 3 daughters and 2 dogs to a beautiful house on the water. It is a dream. Yet after relocating and moving our family to Virginia, we are now told, sorry about taking away your view, sorry about the noise of flipping cages, sorry about the smell of bird feces, sorry about the danger now imposed to you and your kids and your dogs as you paddle, fish, and swim. We hope you don't get hurt. But we still appreciate your tax dollars that as a community we all pay to Virginia in order to live in our beautiful community. I can't imagine the tax revenue from Steamboat Oyster Company on this area of floating cages surpasses that, yet it appears they get priority. Actually, we've looked at this from every angle. Environmentally, it does not make sense. Recreationally, it does not make sense. And from a tax revenue standpoint, it does not make sense. Community members overwhelmingly do not want this. I ask you to confirm your promise Virginia makes to its residents, love. Love of the outdoors and freedoms to explore without infringement, commercialization. And in closing, I want to be clear that this is not about Thomas and Callie's character. It's not about their business. We wish them the best. This is not about supporting watermen and women or oyster farming. We wholeheartedly do. This is about ensuring residents should not have to pay the price of commercial businesses, and other voices in the community, outside of the community, who don't live here should not matter. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Your mother should be very proud of you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Jason Smith.
You can get your pleasantries in later. Please state your name for the
My
record.
name is Jason Smith.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
So in early 2022, when they were buying property, or trying to buy property on Windmill Point Creek, which is adjacent on the other side of this, I was notified as a homeowner.
Microphone.
I was notified as a homeowner that is in direct line of sight. And I was worried to have a commercial business, this was a county thing, not you guys, of course. So I called in and we worked together and had some compromises, and during that whole thing, the county commissioner and everybody was telling me, no floating cages in the creek. So had we not made concessions to them to flip that from residential to commercial, we wouldn't be sitting here today. I was trying to be a good neighbor. They've been great. I mean, I've got no complaints about what they're currently doing. But I feel like I had to come up and say something. I hate being confrontational like this, but I feel like if we let them stay there, we let them come in, and now we're gonna have oyster cages. And I know there's a business reason for that, and I hate their hardship. But I feel if we get a couple floating cages in there now, it'll get bigger. I mean, we'll be back here in 2 more years, right? I hate the word slippery slope, but that's what it feels like. And also one minor thing, the County of Lancaster, that kayak trail, they put in a kayak launch in a big parking lot. So people come from all over and launch just outside and then go through that. So it's not just the people on the creek, it's fairly large.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir. I have one thing to say. I will say this is not a confrontational process. This is part of the process. And I encourage in every aspect and item we hear on this board, no matter how controversial it may be to some of you, we want to hear from everybody on every issue. And so make no mistake about it, from my perspective as chairman, this is not controversial. This is a process to make sure everybody's heard and make sure that we're making the best informed decisions. And not everybody always likes the decisions we make, but it's not because of controversy. It's because we want everybody to be heard, and I appreciate every one of you participating in the process.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Buzz Willow.
Please state your name for the record in the microphone.
Travis Buzz Willett.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir, I do.
Proceed.
Good morning. My name is Travis Willow. I was born and raised in Virginia, and I'm proud to call myself a Virginian. I'm a property owner here in this neighborhood. I love the Northern Neck. From my birth, I've been there every weekend, spending every summer with my grandparents on the Rappahannock. My life as a child was pretty topsy-turvy. I grew up in Chesterfield in a trailer park on Jeff Davis Highway. Still, no matter how crazy my home life was as a child, the Northern Neck and my grandparents were the saving grace every week of my life. Even now, the sights, the sounds, the smell of the Northern Neck continue to excite my inner child senses and bring peace and tranquility to my soul, as it did when I was a kid. When I was a little boy, my grandparents would take me to Fleets Island. I remember thinking that it was the most beautiful place I'd ever saw. So as a blue-collar worker, I've worked every day hard with my hands and my back to get away from that trailer park into Fleets Island. After many years of work and planning, I came to buy the very piece of property that I adored as a child. I want in turn to be able to give that dream to my kids and my grandkids. It's important that we realize that there are 96 properties on Little Oyster Creek. It's a community. It's 96 different families with 96 stories like me that's worked hard their whole life for the American dream. Homeowners and the watermen of the Northern Neck have really never had a lot of trouble working together, I think. We've got oyster grounds throughout our creek that are able to be worked. But now floating oyster cages are invading structured waterfront communities, and that's what we are. But there are many neighborhoods surrounding this thing. I wish you'd come out and look at it for real. Thank goodness I've read on the State of Virginia's website that the Resource Commission has been entrusted to manage Virginia's resources for Virginians like me. So that gives me a lot of hope. The Little Oyster Creek community currently pays $250,000 a year in taxes for our property. We also pay about $500,000 a year to the state from our paychecks. Thomas and Callie want to make a living. They need what all Virginians own together to do this. At the same time, hundreds of us have homes in a protected community creek and expect our government to protect our investments, to protect our children's safety, and also to protect the environment. Thomas and Callie have already been entrusted by Virginians with 45 acres of oyster lease in front of Mosquito Island. And that's a great place because it's away from people. They have only used a very small fraction of that resources that was entrusted to them, and they have plenty of room to increase their businesses and continue to flourish, which we all want to see them do. The county has zoning laws that protect us. Walmart cannot come into our neighborhood and decide to put a store in the middle of it. It should be the same when it comes to floating oyster cages in neighborhoods. Guys, this is different than the way things were done in the past. There are almost 3 million acres of water in the Chesapeake Bay, and there's enough room for every Virginian. I believe the commission can find a balance.
Thomas, can you wrap it up, please?
I believe you can find a balance, sir, that helps floating oyster cage farmers be successful while also protecting our investments. I'd like to say this in closing. Please take the time to ask yourself, would you want floating oyster cages in front of your dream home? Would you want to deal with them when it came to your children and grandchildren? I'm sure that Thomas and Callie are wonderful people. In fact, I know they are. At the same time, this is a business for them. They do not live in our neighborhood. They work in it. They're not asking to put floating oyster cages in front of their homes and their family members' homes or their clients' homes or friends' homes. They're asking to put them in front of our homes. I beg the commission to see that the same Virginians that entrusted you would not want you to place business profits, guys, over Virginians like me, the people of Virginia. Thank you.
Is there any questions for the speaker? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Guys, I want to remind you, I'm trying not to be rude. I am really good at being rude. I'm trying not to be rude. I'm trying to turn over a new leaf, but you guys are going to force me to go back to my old ways, please. Oh, when I say wrap it up, wrap it up. I get it from attorneys. They don't know what 3 minutes is. I get that. So, I get that. So, but anyways, everybody else, please work with me.
Victoria
Chapman. Good morning. I brought you all a copy of the latest Virginia.
State your name for the record.
Good morning,
First Sergeant.
Victoria Chapman.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed. First Sergeant, can you get that?
in the latest Virginia Living, they did a feature article on Steamboat Wharf and the benefits of conservation. And as a TOGA member, Tidewater Oyster Growing Association, I promote, do your water studies, teach you the safety of having floating cages. Also, we check your salinity. We make sure that you actually have water that is decent enough to have these little guys grow in your backyard. And because this area is so prolific in the availability of the algae that these oysters need, it's a fantastic thing to have growing either behind your house or as an entity. In the case of Steamboat Wharf, I'm a professional chef. I've worked for them as an intern for the last 2 summers. I understand the 5 a.m. harvesting, going out early, making sure you have the product available. The miniature oyster seed that they are hoping to put in this area survives because it doesn't have the flux of the water that's outside on the main farm. It also would survive because then the young kids that come as interns can walk over, be in a manageable waterway, and it's right around the bend from where they have their farm. I just wanted to make sure you guys saw the article. We're also part of trying to conserve the water. Everybody's a member of this bay, and we want to keep it thriving. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's okay. They told me I had to put my name. Thomas is right below me.
Mallory
Please state your name for the record and microphone.
Mallory Tuttle.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Good morning, Chairman Green and board members. My name is Mallory Tuttle, and I serve as Associate Director of the Virginia Tech Newport News Center and Center for Economic and Community Engagement. I have to disclose that my comments, views, and opinions do not necessarily reflect the views and positions of Virginia Tech. I have had the pleasure of working with both Callie and Thomas on a state-funded Go Virginia opportunity and growth grant focused on creating workforce development pathways for the aquaculture industry in coastal Virginia. The Promoting Careers in Aquaculture program increases high school students, both juniors and seniors, understanding of what jobs are available in the aquaculture industry. It expands educational opportunities that meet employers' needs and supports internship opportunities that help young people gain experience and awareness. Callie and Thomas are some of the most active and engaged industry partners on the project and have participated in trainings, required background checks, advisory committee meetings, and have hosted student interns 2 years in a row for their 75 hours of experiential learning. It has been a pleasure to work with them on the aquaculture project, and the program has been a success thanks in part to their participation. It is my personal belief that Steamboat Wharf Oyster Company, Callie, Thomas, their employees, including interns, are responsible users of our waterways and are helping to set a new standard for sustainable aquaculture that will keep this legacy industry thriving in our coastal communities. I also believe Callie and Thomas are hardworking and intentional in their practices to ensure their impact is positive on the waterways, community, and industry as a whole. As such, I personally support their application. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you.
Justin Forbes.
Please state your name for the record.
Good morning. My name is Justin Forbes.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
My name is Justin Forbes. I'm from Reedville in the Northern Neck, and I was a frequent visitor to Windmill Point and the resort in the 90s near the site of this request. I consider that the golden years before the impacts of Tropical Storm Isabel. I left the Northern Neck as a young 18-year-old and found a career in the U.S. Coast Guard where I served the last 24 years. I speak to you today as a father. My daughter, Meredith, recently graduated from high school. She's put her educational ambitions on hold to learn more about the ecosystem in the bay. She has found inspiration and is currently employed by the Steamboat Wharf Oyster Company. It's well known that rural areas like the Northern Neck struggle to keep and attract young adults because of the lack of jobs and developmental opportunities. What the Hydes have here is a success story. They went to college and then they came home. And they have started a successful and innovative business, and they have become role models for my daughter and the other young adults who have found meaningful and rewarding work with their company. There are sentiments in the public, sentiments that are all too familiar, like not in my backyard, keep it the way it is, don't open the floodgates, don't degrade my property value. We can all understand those. But before the leading industries in the Northern Neck and rural parts of Virginia were real estate and recreation and tourism, those legacy industries and the heritage of the Northern Neck and other rural areas were farming and harvesting seafood. Two traditions that find a harmonious union in oyster aquaculture. It's a modern approach to the old ways. If we are to sustain our marine ecosystems and our coastal communities through the coming generations with all of the challenges that we know they will face, then we can't afford to discourage young adults and startups from starting new ventures and learning to develop modern approaches to the old ways. I believe it's a duty of all the local residents of the Northern Neck to embrace and support those who are striving to find new ways to incorporate the marine ecosystem and its resources into the modern coastal lifestyle that we all enjoy. That's exactly what this company is striving to do, and in my opinion, their efforts should be supported by all members of their community and by the commission. On my way in this morning, I stopped at Food Lion. Food Lion is a local grocer, American company based out of North Carolina. I picked up a can of seafood, Bumblebee Seafood. That's an American company based out of San Diego, California. But what that company distributes is a product that's farmed and grown in China, oysters. So if we don't support our local watermen and the next generation and their innovative ways of doing business, then that's what we have available to us. It's right on your local grocery shelf. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Nice prop there. I mean, we promote Virginia seafood, but. All right, next speaker.
Kylie Perkins.
Please state your name for the record.
Kyle Perkins.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
So I come here on behalf of Tom and Callie today. I would just like to state that I've been in the culinary industry for 14 years. I've worked all over the country, from places like San Francisco to Nantucket, Oregon. I've been down to Texas, and I've seen many different kinds of food purveyors. One of my goals here, after I moved here 8 months ago, one of my goals here is to create a strong knit community for the culinary industry, as to not have large mass-scale distributors bring trucks from San Diego, from all across the country. And that is a big reason I'm here to support Tom and Callie. Their oyster is a very premium product for us. Understanding that it might be an eyesore, I think, is kind of ill-validated on something that is actually helping clean the waterways. As well, I feel that the fear of a kayak going through a 30-foot wide gap is no different than a kayak going down a small stream. That's an interesting point from my perspective, but I think that's about all I've got.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Ashley. I can't understand the last
Gerzak?
I'm glad now you see why I get the first sergeant. I can't read y'all's hand.
Sorry, it's also a weird
Please
name.
state your name for the record.
Ashley Gerzak.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Thank you. I'm a fellow business owner in a neighboring town to Callie and Thomas and Steamboat Wharf. A quick note, I would just argue that boating, tubing, and jet skiing are more of a detriment to the economy and frankly antithetical to any sort of serenity than an oyster farm. Callie and Thomas of Steamboat Wharf have proven to be integral in our community at large. Our town is on the rise after a post-pandemic world. Thomas and Callie have brought much needed attention to the area, including their recent feature in Virginia Living, which only helps increase property value, As a fellow business owner, we depend on the folks that are here outside of 3 months of the year and the full-time folks here are in need of businesses that provide for them year-round. We've worked together professionally to cultivate community that cross-pollinates across very different industries, but also gives back to the people that live here and are invested in something beyond a truly myopic view and just taking from this beautiful place. We're working hard every day to carve a place in our community, but also to give back to it. The welfare of my business depends on other businesses like Steamboat and the community they are creating through events, pop-ups, outreach, while providing jobs of opportunity and storytelling. They are kind, hardworking, reasonable people of integrity. I support their project and important place in the community that is mutually symbiotic. We don't own the water as consumers, and all ships rise with the tide. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you.
Thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
Rosalie McGurk.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Hello, my name is Rosalie McGurk, and I'm an employee of Steamboat Wharf Oyster Company. My coworkers and I are here to offer our support for the lease application. Speaking from my perspective as an employee, it's clear that Callie and Thomas do not cut corners in any aspect of their business. That starts with hiring and keeping help that's local to the area, and most importantly, paying us a living wage. By doing so, they are allowing us to have some excess money to spend after our savings, and since we're all local, that money stays circulating in the economy of the Northern Neck. With that, it's important to note that much of our hours working this summer have been spent building and repairing cages. While we have been able to deploy a few hundred of these cages, we still have several hundred more on shore ready to deploy, some hopefully on the new lease pending approval. The opportunity costs of these empty cages are substantial on top of the purchase price and labor costs that Callie and Thomas have already spent. Approving this lease could help ease some of these costs and allow for Steamboat Wharf's continued success as growers and a part of the community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Any questions? Thank you, ma'am. That's it. Oh, wow. Well, that being said, I would have, before we get going, I want to.
We have one more.
So you on the list?
I'm on the list. I signed in as a speaker at the front.
What's your name?
George Townsend.
Please come forward. We'll give you a mulligan this time, but that ain't gonna work many more times, Mr. George. We run a little bit tighter ship right here. State your name for the record.
George Townsend.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Good morning. My name is George Townsend. I'm a lawyer in Montrose, Virginia, but I'm here as a private citizen. I'm not going to be as long-winded as the other attorney. I first got acquainted with Thomas and Callie about 2 years ago. I have a 16-year-old hard-headed son named Will. He was doing the Virginia Tech internship.
16-year-old could be hard-headed.
He's 18 now. He's even worse, if that's possible. But in any event, he did the program through Tech. He's the kind of kid who was impacted by COVID. Pretty good student, but took Marine Tech in school. Wanted to do things outdoors. He went to work and did this aquaculture program, and then he did the 75-hour internship at Steamboat Wharf. And when he first found out he was going to be there, he said, what in the world would I go to Whitestone, Virginia? It's over an hour drive, and I don't know those people, and he was out of his comfort zone. When he went down there, he loved it from the first day. First day, the boat broke down. Will could take it apart and help them fix it. They thought he was great, and he thought they were great. So it's something where he was able to work with them. Sometimes they would work 16-hour days. It's a pretty involved process. It involved sorting the oysters, starting with the seed oyster. It involved maintenance with these cages. There was a lot of damage from the beginning. And we're a little bit acquainted with the Waterman business. As everyone knows who really understands it, it's a risk. It's a gamble. You're involved with different places. Not every place is equally good for growing an oyster. Will and the Hydes did it and did very well at it. They're thinking outside of the box. They are people who are innovative and just fine people. They were generous with my son. He did well with them. And he's not always the easiest person. He's quite opinionated, which he probably gets from his mother.
I would say the same thing.
The other thing I will say, if it's all right, is that we grew up, my dad was a commercial fisherman and my wife's father was a crab dredger, so, you know, that's
a sensitive topic right now.
I know, yeah, but that was a long time ago. But the interesting thing is, when we went away to college, stayed in our community, we never see that anymore. You just don't see young people who are able to do it, and it really is substantially, in my view, closed to young people. I have a 16-year-old who wants to crab with my commercial license and is willing to run. He says he can outrun the police if they stop him.
I wouldn't try that.
But the thing is, we've looked into this apprentice program, which I think is taking a little bit of a hiatus right now, from my understanding. But in any event, this is something where this offers a chance for people, and I think this gentleman who spoke about innovation is really hitting things right on the head. When you're able to change the traditional method of harvesting the seafood, you've got to have some flexibility. It seems to me that the Hydes have really shown that. They, my son would make fun of them a little bit, and he'd say, they're from UVA, and they don't know much about the oyster business. But he taught them so much about it, and he learned that there are different ways of doing things. And I think they're brave for doing this and charting their life in this way. And they've taken Will, they've had him shucking oysters. He's been to Richmond. He's met all kinds of people. He's been involved in the science of it. He has really learned things, and he's made money, and he doesn't mind doing what he has to do. We punished him and took his vehicle away, so he's driving my wife's minivan all the way to Whitestone, and people would give him the devil about it.
You have to wrap up. You're out of time.
He still did it. So I appreciate your consideration of them. I think they're doing good things.
You proved yourself to be an attorney. So, anyways, any questions for the counselor? Thank you. That red light flashing is not a mere suggestion. So.
Yeah, where is the light at? Right there.
So, anyways, is there? We'll allow this last gentleman to speak. Come on up, sir. Come on. I mean, the counselor made me amend my rules. Please state your name for the record.
Diane Miller.
Raise your hand. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Like some of the other people, I pursued a lifelong dream to come to this area and retire. My wife and I are avid water people. We like to windsurf, we like to kite surf, we like to paddleboard. And in fact, just to give some weight to my talking here, before I got old and the wheels fell off my wagon a little bit, I have 8 US Open windsurfing titles to my name in a 20-year period. So I know what I'm talking about. And I will tell you that the wind takes wind-powered vessels, sailboats, windsurfers and kites in the direction the wind wants you to go, not in the direction you want to go. So the chances of these channels between the cages aligning with the direction that these vessels can travel is pretty slim. I will also say that unfortunately I've had 3 or 4 close friends die kite surfing. It's always the result of hitting obstacles that are not moving or getting tangled up with lines on the kites and various things. And so basically this farm would completely render the possibility of kite surfing in this area impossible. I will also tell you, as somebody who spends a lot of time in the water, that when we talk about 3 to 4 feet of water depth, that's for 10 minutes of the day. We have a 5-foot variation between low tide and high tide at various times of the year. And the character of that creek and the depth of those cages is going to change substantially. It's not just going to be 3 to 5 feet. Sometimes you're going to be up to your ankles, and sometimes you're going to be over your head. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, sir. Is there any questions for the speaker? Well, thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, Gerald. I appreciate you. I wanted to say one thing before I turn this over to the commission. Thank you, guys. Thank each and every one of you for being civil. I've heard a lot of good things about the applicant from the opposition. That is a rarity, you know, so participating in the process doesn't have to be controversial or confrontational. So thank you all for that, and I appreciate your civility in getting involved in the process.
Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
I would just like to ask, if I may, if Mr. Rowland could come up. I have just a couple questions about this information he provided.
Mr. Rowland?
Thank you, Mr. Rowland. I had some questions about this map that you put up with Lot 1 and Lot 2. Those are your properties as the adjacent property owner. In Lot 1, I see your house and a dock to, I guess, which is the southwest. Lot 1, it looks to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that the majority of that, probably about 60%, a little bit more than half, is either marsh or wetlands, or is it designated wetlands, or is it just all marsh?
I would classify it as marsh.
Marsh, and then Lot 2 looks about, I don't know, about 35–40%. And I don't know if there's any prohibitions in building in that marsh or permitting through the marsh. So the question I have is, if it's marsh or wetlands, you know, a lot of times we see these applications and they're in, you know, residential areas or in shorelines that have a lot of houses, and this doesn't appear to be the case. And I wanted to ask you to clarify what that majority of Lot 1 is, which is adjacent to this, adjacent to the proposed lease. Is it marsh or wetlands, and if there's any prohibition in building or developing in that?
I'm not aware of any prohibitions with regard to building or development in that. I know that Lot 2 has been approved for septic and for building on that lot, which, you know, we could eventually put a dock out on that property.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Commissioner.
Mr. Erskine.
While Mr. Rowland's there, can I ask a question? In your previous testimony, you said that about a week ago you offered to the applicant a compromise and you had not heard back. I'm curious what that compromise was.
So we had been at one point on April 23rd, Mr. Hyde sent a text to multiple individuals indicating we've decided to reduce the size of the project. That should give us enough grow out space to hold us over through the year until we work another solution or buy sturdier gear for the Mosquito Island lease. So when we started researching and when we purchased the adjacent property in March, and that to me, then the proposed plan got reduced. And I'm of the opinion that it was most likely due because of the JPA that we were investigating for our adjacent property. So we had sent a text to Mr. Hyde saying that we would forego pursuing our dock JPA for 1 year to allow them to get their feet under them financially. However, the footprint of the project would need to shift to be located in front of our adjacent lot to reduce the impact from our direct line of sight for 1 year only. Later in the afternoon, on May 19th, Mr. Hyde said, hey, just read your email. We're going to send it to Adam Kenyon to get his input. I'm okay with that as long as the change doesn't impact our timeline with the hearing. The hearing was then postponed 4 days later. We had no idea why. We didn't know if it was because he was coming up with a new revision. You know, did they change their mind and go elsewhere, which it seems they're doing. They come in and out all the time to go make some income and put some money in their pocket. No, after that, no communication for 2 months. I'm giving you a roundabout answer to your question, but I'm getting to the point. On the 11th of July, Mr. Kenyon indicates the public hearing has been rescheduled for July 23rd. On the 15th, 4 days later, I called Mr. Kenyon to inquire about the overall status and if a revised plan had been submitted. No, but he encourages trying to find a compromise with the applicant. Mr. Kenyon also states that the VMRC can put stipulations on JPA, such as time. The next day, on the 16th, I sent a text to Mr. Hyde inquiring as to whether he reached out to Mr. Kenyon regarding a revised plan with a 1 year time commitment, to which I have received no response. How does this make sense when the Hydes have stated in their previous communications, one of which is dated April 28th, to the neighbors on Little Oyster Lane, their desire to work together moving forward? We had put that offer on the table. He initially said he was, and then he got no response.
my point on that is, and this is where I go against a little bit the rest of us, my wife and I are trying to find a compromise so they can. But we do not want that there every year. The risk of them getting in there for 1 year is then, well, they're there, what was the harm? But we would want that 1 year tied to that, and then after that, they need to go elsewhere. And I don't know if that can be put in to a decision, but
Okay,
does that
so,
answer your question?
well, I just want to clarify so I understand, that the compromise was a 1 year permit period.
Yes.
That was a compromise,
Yes.
in the current location.
Yeah,
Move it up.
moving it in front of our lot, so it's directly, we can wake up every morning and go to bed every evening and look out the view that I just shown you that picture of. And that's what we see. I do not want to see a football field of plastic floating crates there.
Okay, thank you.
So that's why we were suggesting to move it in front of our adjacent property. And so we would forego the JPA for the pier.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, before I, any more questions for the speaker? I'm gonna give you a little. So now I'm gonna turn it over to the applicant for a minute or so for rebuttal, if you would like. State your name for the record, please. You're already sworn in.
Okay. So I guess with regard to Mr. Rowland's the compromise, yes, the concern about the 1 year thing, we weren't going to ever agree to. I wasn't was a part of the deal. If we put it there, it's going to stay there longer than 1 year for the 5 years, or however long the commission the mandates. However, shifting it over, I guess it would be to the northeast. We will entertain that, if we need to shift the whole footprint. However, we didn't want to postpone the hearing again because if we had to revise it, that would mean a shift in the date of the hearing. So that's why. Yeah, well, the reason why we moved it to the north or the south, the southwest initially was to avoid any potential dock from that other property. But from what I understand, he's more concerned about view than dock. So if that's the case, then we are able to shift it to the northwest. We can do that.
Any questions for the applicant? Ms. Kellum?
I have one, sir.
Mrs. Kellum first. Oh, you get the microphone, huh? You're special.
One of the issues from the opposition was noise level. And my question to you would be, what would be the difference in noise level between the floating cages and the bottom cages, which it seemed like they all agreed to bottom cages, but in my eyes, I was thinking maybe the bottom cages would create more noise.
Yeah, we wouldn't, have a crane and be lifting gear out of the water. And to be fair, it's going to require to work the same amount of oysters. It would require more cages, more bottom cages on a larger footprint, which would mean more time spent out there. So it's not necessarily that the noise would be any louder; it's that we would be out there longer. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Mr. Preston?
Yes, sir. This is, your primary purpose of this is for a nursery. Did I understand that clearly? And as far as understanding, where's your nursery currently at this point?
So we're making do with, we've got 1 millimeter mesh tube socks that are in those 10 millimeter baskets that are out on Mosquito Point, okay. Which is not ideal because they're 8 millimeter oysters in a 1 millimeter mesh sock that gets fouled up real quick. Yeah. And then if that sock rips, they're falling through the 10 millimeter cage that they're inserted into. So that's where we're at now, which is not an ideal solution.
Okay, this would be full-time, year-round nursery.
Yes, sir.
And it'd be wintered up, those oysters that seed oyster that maybe you put in there in August or September, it would winter there.
It would overwinter, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Mr. Hand?
It appears to me that the biggest issue is floating plastic cages, not whether you're going to grow oysters out there. So I wanted to learn more about your hardship if you had to do, I'm going to call it a standard cage rather than a floating cage.
Right.
Yeah, you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name for the record.
Callie Robinson. We chose this style of farming for a couple different reasons. We started off with bottom cages, and it was just the two of us, and we realized quickly how it's just like not feasible to run a farm, just the two of us with a lot of bottom cages. And we've also realized that the product that we can grow with floating gear is like exponentially higher quality, and therefore we can get a higher price for it in the market as two people with a small team of 3 kids who can work all of the machinery and everything we can all do together. It's not limited by how much weight someone can lift. The idea of bottom cages, I think, is a higher danger to swimmers, kayakers, all of the recreation that these people mentioned. 1, because you can't see them, and 2, because if you're swimming and you hit one of those, you're gonna get hurt. It's gonna hurt. They rust. It's not great. It really isn't like the best solution. These guys, yes, you can see them, which I think it makes them easier to avoid. And it's also plastic. If you hit it, it will hurt, but you're not gonna go get a tetanus shot. You're not gonna have to go get like stitches. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Did that answer your question?
Sorry.
I get the feel for it. You feel it's less feasible, it definitely affects the quality of the product, my takeaway.
Right. Well, we're not currently set up for bottom cage. We would have to reinvest and shift our whole business to bottom cages. And at this point, based on how much we have invested in the floating cage, I don't think we could do that.
So I'm trying to weigh your hardship against the opposition, and I feel for the opposition. I live on the water, and I see their point of view. And then one more quick question. What prohibits you, how much gearing up is there to survive more weather in a more exposed location?
So the cages themselves are about $35 a piece, all components, not including assembly and shipping and all that. So it would, the immediate concern is that we don't have a place to put our seed, so that would be detrimental to our ability to sell oysters next season and throughout the holidays. And then the long term, we don't have, like we don't have the available funds to just purchase a whole new farm and assemble it for, and the cost of assembling and everything, and the timeline that it takes to do that. It wouldn't get done this year, which means we wouldn't have oysters to sell this coming fall and winter, which would torpedo our business, to be perfectly honest.
Currently what we're dealing with right now, due to the rougher waters that we experienced with the gear that we're trying to find a new place for, we lost our entire farm, everything. And that's really hard to quantify, like emotionally, financially, like it was rough. It was really rough. And
so we went from 2,000 of these 5mm mesh cages to 0 out there on Mosquito Island, and we've purchased 750 of the 10mm cages, those sturdier reinforced ones, but that's not nearly enough to compensate for what we lost.
Any more questions? Well, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for your time. All right, that being said, I think we've hashed that out enough. Matters before the commission.
Commissioner, I'd like to say a few things.
Yes, sir, Mr. Branson.
When we deal with, first let me thank the petitioner for your comments, as well as the folks who live in the creek. We're often faced with these decisions in more densely populated areas with a different type of floating oyster aquaculture. The traditional, they're larger, and this seems to be quite different. Some of the things notes that I took from you and was also from the applicant is that this Rappahannock River area, this creek is 1,000 feet wide and 600 feet of navigable channel, which is, as I understand from Chief Kenyon, is from about the 4-foot level where docks might end to where docks might start on the opposite side. 600 feet of navigable channel, which is more than enough to navigate. And for Mr. Rowland, the lot 1, about 60% marsh land, 400 feet of marsh, I estimate from his image, and then another 200 feet to the beginning of the floating flip farm. So that's about 600 feet from his marsh to there, which is considerable distance. These floating flip cages, I've never seen them actually. I'm familiar with the more traditional method. 9 inches of exposure in desiccant level, I guess when you're drying them out or cleaning them, and then 1 inch of floating when they're in the feeding mode flipped over. That doesn't present much of a viewscape, although I respect your position, Mr. Rowland and Mrs. Rowland, from the balcony of where you took your photo. I respect that. After all, it's going to be 60 feet wide and 200 feet long from your drawings, 3 rows. The flip farm method's new to me. They attempt to mitigate many of these issues of floating traditional oyster bag. The view shed, they're about the lowest profile from what I gather that you can get to. The noise is minimal. I guess you're there less time, less noise. I've seen the traditional floating oyster bags. They bring a crane, they hoist them up, they put them in a tumbler, they rattle them around, they put them back. And those aren't seed oysters that I'm talking about. It's different than what you're doing. Much lower noise footprint and minimal time. And then the fouling and bird issues, which is something we've heard a lot about. This is the minimalist effort that would promote the bird fouling and growth fouling than any of the methods. So I want to appreciate what Steamboat Wharf Oyster Company is doing with more efficient, more modern methods. It's a difficult decision, but it's one that I would support. It's in a relatively rural area in front of marshland, not directly in front of anyone's house. And the navigation with kayaks, I kayak myself. You've got quite a bit. And from a kayaker's perspective, kayaking around a floating oyster lease is far better than kayaking over a traditional enclosure, bottom enclosure, simply for the safety factor, especially in 3 to 4 feet to 5 feet of water. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Any more comments? Ma'am, do not raise your hand. This is before the commission. We do not run a firehouse meeting, and it'll turn my attitude quick. Sorry. That being said, matters still before the commission. Mr. Erskine.
So maybe I have more of a comment first, but I want to thank the applicants and the support as well as the opposition for coming and offering, your comments. I think every associate commissioner here read the packet in depth. You took your time to say what was in opposition and what was in support, and I think that's important in this process. If you've noticed, there's been several questions from this board regarding this in support and in opposition. I'm a firm believer that aquaculture is very important in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and there's a proper place to conduct aquaculture and places in the Commonwealth that are not the right place to conduct aquaculture. So this industry has gone through some transformations in the last couple decades, some of which was traditional, what you might call traditional planting on the bottom. We're all familiar with that. And then it did go to off-bottom cages of various heights, and that requires permits or operating under a regulation. More recently, you find these kind of floating gear. Commissioner Branson suggested that this is a innovative method with a low profile and less of an obstruction to the view shed, and I would agree. I've seen this flip farm in action. It is a very quick process. It has a lower profile. There are many benefits to this. I think some of this is the fear of the unknown, and some of this is there's going to be, if successful, a permit issued for a certain period of time. Not 1 year. I understand that was maybe a compromise, but there's a 5-year period for this. And if there are issues, If there's non-compliance, those factors weigh with the commission when the staff looks at the permit. I'm sure when Chief Kenyon looks at this and says, this has to go up for another reevaluation, then those comments or those, oppositions would be adjudicated at that time. So, we have to be able to balance this. And again, I think the public trust doctrine was brought up several times. There are multiple users of this waterway. In my mind, I think there has been a compromise where you applied for something that was larger, and you reduced that application, hopefully to adjust some of the opposition. That may have worked. It obviously did not appease all of your opposition. I personally would welcome moving it if Mr. Rowland or some of the opposition wanted to see this farm move slightly to avoid some of the view shed. I think that's fine. But to take this footprint and say it's only for recreational use, I don't think is fair to the commercial side of the industry. We're talking about balancing this in the public trust doctrine. So in that regard, I'll listen to other associate members' comments.
Ms. Edwards?
My comment was that I wanted to make a motion to approve the Steam Point Wharf Oyster Company application.
We have a motion to approve the application from Ms. Edwards.
As submitted?
As submitted. Okay.
As submitted.
Second. Got a second from Mr. Branson, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Any further discussion? Mr. Headley?
If she's approving it, does that also include the following special conditions that staff recommended? It's 8 of them.
Yes. I would say that's how I took it. Is that right, Mr. Kenyon?
Yes, that would be correct, and those are standard perfect conditions with all of our permits.
Yeah, that's standard. That's nothing. Any more discussion? I have a motion from Ms. Edwards and a second from Mr. Branson. If there's no further comment, is there any opposition? Raise your hand if you oppose this motion that's been seconded. That being said, motion carries unanimously. All right, moving along. More public comment. So at this time, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak during public comment? Do we have anybody signed up, Joe? Nobody signed up, okay. I'm sorry. All right. All right, that being said, Pat, looks like you're up. Chief Gear.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Pat Gear. I'm the Chief of Fisheries Management Division, and this should be relatively short today for a fisheries item. It's one of the pleasures I have is giving money to fishing tournaments and children's events. So today is we're here to talk about recreational fishing advisory board funding, a recommendation for a project out of cycle. Okay, there we go. Oh, why is it not moving forward? Here we go. I got that. Okay, here we go. The Virginia Saltwater Recreational Fishing Development Fund consists of monies collected from the sale of saltwater fishing licenses, and it's codified in the Code of Virginia under Section 28.2-302.3. And this describes what the fund is and what it can be used for. And one of those items is improving recreational fishing opportunities. And we're very happy that we provide some of these funds each year for fishing events under that improved fishing opportunities. Those fishing events are for education, experience, as well as maybe creating future anglers as well. And the applicant is the Broken Men's Foundation. It's an organization out of Richmond, Virginia, and it works with children from 11 to 18 years old. It's a 20-week mentorship program. through education, trying to do life skills, professional visits, camping trips, and it's an incentive base, so they have a series of goals. And some of those goals for completing the program at the end is trips. And one that they'd like to do is a fishing trip. And so they're requesting $13,975 for that fishing trip for their summer event that they're doing. That will cover the charter fees. They're going to be going on a charter boat, fishing gear and equipment and things like that. The foundation initially applied for this funding for both 24 and 25 for their spring fishing trips, but because of scheduling conflicts, they couldn't get the spring trip in for this year, so they revised the 2004 trip for a summer trip that they're going to be doing. So this is out of cycle. The Recreational Fishing Advisory Board met on July 9th, and they strongly supported this, and they recommend funding this out of cycle. And they will be, the foundation will be putting in, you'll be hearing from them again because they have an application for the 2025 cycle, which will be reviewed this fall with the rest of the grants that we have for that. So staff is recommending funding the Broken Men Foundation Summer Program fishing trip for a total of $13,975 from the Virginia Saltwater Recreational Fishing Development Fund. Any questions?
Thank you. Is there any questions from the commission for Chief Gear? Mr. Headley?
You say this is for one fishing trip or multiples?
It's for one fishing trip. It's a charter trip. It's 105 children, so they have to pay. They have to pay for that charter. That's why I think on average it's about, or when we have these fishing tournaments that we do, that a lot of fishing groups do these, it's about $29 a person, but because they're going on the charter boat, that's why it's so much more.
Any more questions? Thank you, Pat. Thank you so much. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this matter before I carry it before the commission? All right, we won't ask twice.
Motion to approve.
Matters before the commission. Have a motion to approve. Second. Mr. Headley, got a second from Ms. Edwards. Any further discussion needed? Is there anyone opposed to this motion that's been seconded? That being said, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Pat. It's a lot easier than me counting the yeas and nays. So, that being said, if there's no further business, I think that winds up, Pat, you don't have anything else, do you?
No, that's it.
There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. The next commission meeting will be Tuesday, August 27th, 2024. Thank you. This year is going to change up on us. I did, didn't I? Shake it.